Today, so the first part of the morning session, we're going to discuss the five aggregates in detail. Yesterday, we touched on that from Venerable Rahula's what the Buddha taught and the description on anatta or no soul. But today I selected this scholarly article on the five aggregates. Actually, it's more like neurological. It's more like explaining more scientific terms. This is by one scholar, Nandini D. Karuna Muni, because I thought that you could download lots of literature on the five aggregates from Google, but among them, I think I like this description of Nandini's description of the five aggregates. As you are familiar, yesterday we did touch on the five aggregates. Remember, according to Venerable Rahula's book, our selfhood, our body and mind are divided into two parts. Selfhood, that is body, that is rupa, and then mind, nama. And then again it's divided into five rupa. The first one is the material part of our selfhood. And then the rest four are the mental part of our selfhood. And of the mental part of our selfhood, and then we come up with the list. There are five mental parts of our selfhood. That is Vedana, sensation, and Sanya, perception, Sankhara, karmic formations or accumulations, and Vijnana, consciousness. And we also discussed the fact that wherever Buddha has explained the five selfhood, and he has used a deconstructive approach, meaning instead of explaining selfhood as one single entity, he would divide. That's what the term deconstructive means. He would divide self into different areas, and then he would explain them, just to give us, get a message across. The message being the fact that unlike soul or Atman, selfhood is not a uniformed one single entity. So it is made of five areas. First part is material aspect, material part, that is the physical body, and the rest four being the mental parts, mental areas. And then, excuse me. Now, see that I think it's also worth going through Nandini's, Karuna Muni's abstract. See, the purpose of this article is to explore a model of the mind generally known as the five aggregates, described in Buddhist teachings that relate to understanding subjective conscious experience from a first-person perspective. I like that term. To understand subjective conscious experience. Remember, we heard again and again, repeatedly, that we are subjective beings, and then the natural built-in approach that we use to observe our own existence and that of anything in the external world is the subjective approach, and the subjective approach is built-in, natural, and fundamental to our human condition. And so this, for the Karuna Muni, he used the word subjective conscious experience. So we are conscious experience here means usually conscious experience here denotes that we use our 5 sense faculties. So that as some of you asked the question yesterday, so that it could be subconscious experience as well, like in dreams. When we are awake also, at times we are, our behavior is at times governed by or directed by subconscious or latent mental tendencies. But as sensual beings, we basically use our conscious experience, either from a first person perspective. I think that term, this phrase is very nice. Probably you can take note of that also. And so that here, Karuna Muni is using the teaching of the 5 aggregates just as a potential theoretical source that could guide meditation, mindfulness interventions. This is more like a scientific explanation of the 5 aggregates. So according to the 5 aggregates, the 5 aggregate mode of the mind, our experience involves material form. Material form is rupa, R-U-T-A-P-A, rupa. Actually, you may be fed up with me repeating these Pali terms again and again, so that I'm not going to write them. I'm not going to type them in. So that material form, that is rupa, and feeling or sensation, that is vedana, perception, that is sanya, volition, that is mental formation, so volition, and then sensory, and then vijnana, consciousness, sensory consciousness. And she used different scholars use slightly different English translation of the original Pali terms. She used the term sensory consciousness because our consciousness is based on our sense faculties, sensory consciousness. And then so that the mind stream that is constantly changing from moment to moment is extensively analyzed in this tradition. So that this article explains that methodologies in neuroscience increase our understanding of neuropsychological underpinnings of mental phenomena, and also provide important evidence on the practical utility of meditation. When considering moment by moment changes that happen in the mind, however, these investigations represent sensory consciousness followed by perception that happens within the mind stream itself. So that that's what that's the basic definition of this is a question. Okay, thank you. So there's a question here, or I think it's a response. The one place where the Buddha was asked whether or not there was a self, he refused to answer. When later asked why, he said that to answer either yes, there is a self, or no, there isn't, would be fall into extreme forms of wrong view that make the path of Buddhist practice impossible. Thus the question should be put, why this is from Bhikkhu Thanissaro in his book Noble Study. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So actually Thanissaro Bhikkhu's books are very abstract, and I think he is a scholar, and then he is a world authority on Pali text scripture, like so is Bhikkhu Bodhi. So that and Buddha never, every time possible, Buddha would avoid terminological ambiguity and terminological hazards, as we say in linguistics. And so that in case Buddha said, so that's why he never wanted to say yes or no, because every time Buddha was asked a question, most probably it was an unenlightened person, because if so that not that Buddha actually wanted to refuse. Based on the audience, he would give a slightly different answer. For example, if it were someone who would firmly believe that everything is eternal, and at that point Buddha wouldn't And at that point, if he was asked whether self is existent, and he would say, and he would not say yes, because why? The other person asking him the question would then conclude, okay, then Buddha is also an eternalist. And then in case there were, the very person asking him the question is believe in nihilism or and his nihilistic ideas. And then so at that point, and Buddha would not say no. In case he said no, the very person who believes in nihilism would determine that the Buddha also nihilistic. So that this is at times Buddha would avoid providing verbal answers. He would say he wouldn't. He would say neither yes nor no, and he would answer. So that is why, that's what I think Thanissaro Bhikkhu further, and everyone can read that book. So let's go through the 5 aggregates model of the mind. The 5 aggregates, again, you know, the rupa, that is physical body, and then so that in association of, as part of the physical body, and in association with the physical body exists the mental part of it. So the 5 aggregates model of the mind describes subject to conscious experience from a first person perspective. And here comes, this is actually this is a conclusive statement. And then and the next one, let's move so that we don't have to think about this as a model, because we only need to look at how she explains the 5 aggregates. The 5 aggregates are described as constituting the basic components that make up oneself, and the oneself means our selfhood. And she's quoting Analayo and Bodhi as saying, Analayo is a German scholar, monk, and he's young. And then I love his English. I love his teaching, and his teaching, his writings are, most of them are free, available for free download on Google. You can get that. So that now here Nandini is quoting Analayo and Bodhi, both of whom are, Analayo is a German Buddhist monk, Bodhi is an American Buddhist monk, scholars, both are scholars, as saying that the 5 aggregates are described as constituting the basic component that make up self. Yeah, again, the whole point here is, again, the Buddha's deconstructive analysis of selfhood, not being one entity, but not uniformed, not permanent. It's conditional. It's a conditional entity. The first aggregate is material form that includes both the physical body and external matter. The other 4 aggregates are feeling, perception, volition, and sensory consciousness. So that in this model, feeling relates to the subjective affective repercussions of an, next page. Yeah, so page 2. Experience, perceptions represent being aware of attributes of an object, and volition describe the reactive purposive aspect of the mind, including both intention and behavior. Now, let's look at the table. See the 5 aggregates, see the material form, feeling, material form rupa, feeling, that is Vedana, perception, sanya, perception, sanya, then volition, that's karmic formations, and then sensory consciousness. They are more like drivers, I would like to say, because you cannot just point. If you can see the mind, and you can't draw a line. You cannot separate these how to say, these mental aggregates from one another. So feeling is it's like a drive, a perception, and volition. So they are part of our psychology. And then so look at the material form, elementary components that make up not only the physical body, but the external environment. See, so this is called the extended self also, because our selfhood remains continually interconnected with the external world. And then look at the examples: atoms and molecules that continually move to and from the body. Now, see, usually you don't come up with that sort of definition in a spiritual text or in religious how to say, religious types of scholarly articles. This is more like a scientific article. And then and then feeling, subject to affective repercussion of an experience. So that pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral feelings. I think the corresponding Pali terms are for pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral feelings are sukha, then dukkha, and sukha, dukkha, and upekkha. So that sukha is pleasant, and dukkha is unpleasant, and upekkha is neutral. And those are the three types of feelings that we create. And then what happens? Every time that we feel something means, so that of course we are subjective, so that affective repercussions of an experience we experience. And then so that based on whichever the type of experience, it could be a pleasant feeling, it could be an unpleasant feeling, it could be a neutral feeling, it affects our behavior, it affects our mind, it affects our physical body. And then so she uses here mostly in the negative term, subject to affective repercussions. Now, are we, according to the basic description of human psychology, we human beings are mostly negative. We have a negative approach to things. And then, so you can better understand that. Remember, I typed that in before. I think it's gone. Let me see. So that nowhere has the Buddha said that five aggregates are suffering. And now there's another thing. Not that the five aggregates are, not that the five aggregates are suffering, but that the very clinging to them is suffering. Now you come across two terms in the Pali scriptures. That is, the first one is so pancha. First one is panchakanda. Pancha is five. Kanda is sorry, I misspell aggregate. khandhas are aggregates. But nowhere has the Buddha said that 5 aggregates are suffering. Now, what he says is, Pancha, he uses this term, Pancha, my computer is very old now, Pancha, Upadana Khandha. Upadana Khandha. So Pancha Upadana Khandha. Upadana, we learned that yesterday. Upadana is clinging. So it's not the 5 aggregates themselves that bring us suffering, but the very clinging or upadana to the 5 aggregates that bring us suffering, that make us unhappy. Because let's look at the Buddha's selfhood. Now, just like me, just like any unenlightened being, Buddha has material form, his physical body, and he creates feelings, and he creates he has perception, and he creates volitional action, and then he uses sensory consciousness. And then so the Buddha's 5 aggregates, Buddha's selfhood is no different than that of ours. But there's one big difference between the Buddha and us ordinary people. Now, Buddha doesn't have upadana or clinging to his selfhood. So upadana is the problem. Upadana creates the problem here. That is where the problem is. Now, it is the very clinging to our selfhood that brings us sadness, despair, and anything negative. When you don't have upadana towards your own selfhood, and then so you don't have to worry about that. And again, so upadana corresponds to the very natural built-in approach that we use in understanding, in defining, identifying ourselves. And of course, anything in the external world, that is the subjective approach. Now, and then he says that in his description, you come across this Buddhist sutra. You can download the English translation. Satya Vibhanga Sutra, meaning sutra on the analysis of truth. Vibhanga is analysis and truth. Now, this is this sutra, Satya Vibhanga, is an extension to the Buddha's first sermon. Buddha's first sermon, that is Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, the discourse on setting the wheel of Dharma in motion. And in the Satya Vibhanga Sutta, you come across this statement that is called Sankittena Panchupada. Sankittena Panchupadana Khandha Dukkha. Now, this phrase occurs toward the end of a statement of dukkha, statement of suffering, that that is, and he says, and you can just listen. You don't have to, you don't have to memorize this Pali phrase just to get the idea in English. I'm just saying this. So the jatipi dukkha, birth is dukkha, jarapi dukkha. So decay, aging is dukkha, vyadipi dukkha, sickness is dukkha, maranampi dukkham. So death is dukkha. Maranampi dukkham. Yampichang nalabati tampi dukkham. If we anticipate being able to grab something, achieve something, and we never get it, and that's also dukkha. So that, and then he keeps explaining, and finally says, Sankittena in a nutshell, in short, Panchupadanakkhandha dukkha, not Panchakkhandha dukkha, not that five aggregates bring us suffering, but Pancha Upadanakkhandha dukkha. In short, in a nutshell, Sankittena, Panchupadanakkhandha dukkha. The very clinging to our five aggregates brings us dukkha, suffering. So the problem is not with the five aggregates, not with the selfhood itself, but the way we approach, the way we observe, the way we discern, the way we define and identify our selfhood, our existence. And by the way, here, so selfhood is synonymous with existence. Remember, existence or becoming, we used the term atta bhava yesterday. Atta bhava, the streaming self. Now, self, it doesn't stay at one point. So it is a whole flow. It is a stream. It continues to flow as the self is not fixated anywhere. It continues to run. It continues to stream. And then this moment, so by the time I hit the next moment, my material form, my physical body would have changed a little bit. So, and we don't notice that change, biological change. But every time our body cells, and we go through that neurological and biological change in our physical body. And in this moment, I'm feeling something, but the next moment I would feel something else. And this moment, my sanya, I am connected. My sanya, my perception is about this computer screen. I'm just moving the cursor around the word perception. But the next moment, I would just move my cursor onto the chat box, and maybe I will start typing something in. That's the perception again. And the volition is the reactive or purposive aspects of the mind that include intention as well as behavior. And then, so this is, and we purposely, intentionally create ideas, concepts, so that dreams and all that is the duty, that is what the volition does. And at the same time, I'm using my sense faculties at this time. I hear the air conditioner running, and that's my, so that is, I'm using my sensual faculty of ears just to observe the sound of the air conditioner. And the next moment, I'm just looking at this pen. So that is my visual consciousness, eye consciousness. And the previous one was ear consciousness. And then, then I'm just feel like I'm just drinking some water. Then that is the tongue consciousness. And then so that, so I am drinking my coffee, and then I'm smelling the coffee. That is my tongue consciousness. And then I am just touching my phone with my skin. So that is my skin consciousness. Now, these 5 types are called the sensory consciousness. And then, so every time we could be, we are touching something. That's one word we used yesterday. So when it comes to sensory consciousness, Buddha uses these two words. The whole process of our selfhood in action is described in terms of these two words. There is Indriya and Arambana. Indriya is the sense faculty. That is our eyes, our nose, our tongue, our etc. etc. And then Arambana, so Indriya is the sense faculty, and Arambana is the sense object. Arambana is sense object. Whatever we grasp through our sense faculties is called Arambana, sense object. Now, the very function of selfhood, the five aggregates, as one single mechanism that is called selfhood, is called Arambana. And then, so while my material form, which is my physical body, is so that physical body, that is my skin. And then, so that when it comes to our five sense faculties, and then we have no other business other than always, continually observing, discerning something or grasping something through our sense faculties. And we don't stop that process. So the process, the functionality of the five aggregates as one conditionally uniformed entity is understood in terms of Indriya and Arambana. And please note that term. So conditionally uniformed. Our selfhood is a conditionally uniformed entity. It's not even including the most subtle, so that even our consciousness, everything, whatever that form, what is called selfhood or self, so that our body and our mind could be considered an entity, but that entity is not an unchanging entity, like Atman in theistic religions. Instead, it is explained as a conditionally uniform entity. We continue to go through our material form, our physical body, continue to go through change. And as a result, we see aging. We experience aging. Our feelings, feeling is an aggregate, but actually it goes through constant change. So that, and our perception goes through constant change. Our volition goes through constant change. At the same time, our sensory consciousness also goes through constant change. While we use the five aggregates to experience our existence, and that experience in turn, so that transforms or makes some changes into our selfhood. So, for example, the material form with your physical body, and now, for example, with your feelings. For example, I think this is a better example: feeling. Now, you use the aggregate of feeling to feel the world with your sense faculties. Then what happens is, in case you find a certain object, certain sensory object more interesting, and there then you would use your, and then you would use the aggregate of feeling to experience that particular thing more frequently, and you may even get addicted to that, and that could when it goes over limit, it can even affect your feeling. So that's why the Nandini is using the word repercussions. So that it's most of the time Buddha has explained realities in the negative. So that and for example, dukkha. It's not because Buddha's teaching is how to say, is pessimistic. Because sometimes I've been asked on numerous occasions as to whether Buddha's vision, Buddha's teaching is a pessimism. No, Buddha's teaching is neither a pessimism nor an optimism, but a realism. But as subjective beings, we are mostly negative. And then so that he simply explains the negative approach, negative subjective approach that we use towards discerning, towards understanding and defining and identifying our own empirical existence. So he simply explained, that's why he explains the realities mostly in negative terms. So that, and then we are, as subjective beings, our approach, our subjective approach, of course, I don't needless to repeat the same word, we are subjective beings. So as subjective beings, our approach is mostly negative. So that, and the negativity, that negative approach is due to the fact that consciously or subconsciously, we want our existence to be all positive. We want the graphed external world that we perceive through our sense faculties also to be a positive, and also to be a source of satisfaction, gratification. But when it doesn't happen, when the world goes against our wish, when the external world or the sensory world or the world that we perceive through our sense faculties fails to bring us gratification, then we break up with the world. And so that's why basically, fundamentally, we are negative as subjective beings. Any questions so far? So, and then she experience, perception, represents being aware, from the previous page. And please pay attention. I would like to bring your attention to the second paragraph here. The five aggregates are also described in terms of internal and external. That's Analayo's explanation in his book. So we experience, observe, and analyze not only the external world, but also observe and analyze the internal world. That includes attempting to understand the structure, function of various organ systems of the human body. For example, studying the musculoskeletal system in detail happens as observation, sensory consciousness, followed by perception aggregate, or perception, aggregate of perception. Furthermore, in studying and analyzing the brain, it is the mind that makes inferences, aggregate of perception, in terms of how the brain works, as the brain cannot talk for itself. The mind also thinks about ourselves and about the mind itself, as we are doing right now. So now, the point here is the aggregate of material form me or I? Is feeling me or I? Is perception me or I? Is volition me or I? Is sensory consciousness me or I? Is any one of these five aggregates is me or I? No. all these five aggregates together is me, is I amness. So that's another, I think I mentioned that in one of in previous coursework. This is I learned this term one scholar. His name is Dr. Lawrence. Dr. Lawrence, and he uses the word term instead of selfhood. He uses the term I amness, meaning why? Because selfhood is an ongoing, it's a streaming process. It's an ongoing process. So that it's a different me at this moment, and it's going to be a different me the next moment. And when it comes the next moment, next moment, next moment, and it's different me, it's a different I, it's a different selfhood, because we constantly change biologically, aging, and in terms of feeling, perception. So remember one word that we use, sankhara, dynamics of experience. You can better understand selfhood as an incessant stream of incessant stream of experience. What we get from our existence, what we achieve from our experience, is simply the experience, nothing. Experience itself. That experience could be based on the feeling. That experience could be pleasant, it could be unpleasant, or it could be neutral. And finally, what we would have gathered in data form is nothing but experience. And because it continues to occur, experience continues to occur, it continues to happen, and so that it's called dynamics. It's dynamic, actually. It doesn't stop there. And sankhara continues there. And look at that sankhara in terms of material from rupa, vedana, sanya, sankhara, volitional activity. So even though sankhara is here used as a volitional activity, but sankhara has different meanings also. Under the sankhara in here, meaning dynamic experience, our entire selfhood, that our entire selfhood is living, or that I am living in subjective terms, that me living, you living, meaning you are, I am experiencing, you are experiencing. Experiencing is what? You are simply creating feelings. And what is the purpose of that? And lots of times I have been asked, what is the purpose of our existence? I would say, I don't know. There's no single purpose of existence. And then there's no universal purpose of existence. Now, probably when you ask a theistic person, like those who believe in theism, well, and then you could simply come up with a theological answer. Well, God created me, and he created me because my Atman, my soul, was in him, and so that he took it out, and he so that he gave and he put my Atman into life form, so that I am here, I am feeling now. And then what is the purpose? One day, having experienced the world, I will go back. But still, even some theistic people believing in the theistic notion of self, and they are not actually happy. So that if my Atman, if my soul was with him, and then finally I will go back to him one day, then why did I come back to life in order just to go through mostly go through negative things: pain, sufferings, disappointment, despair, sense of unfulfillment, depression, frustration, and all that, then I would not have come into life. My Atman would have been there forever. Why did he create me? Why did he give me a life form? If I go back there one day, as I wander around, as I move through existence, mostly it is not pleasant feeling. Mostly it is not good things that I go through, but negative things during my empirical existence. So what is the purpose? And so that regardless of your religious backgrounds, people happen to question their existence. And then, but again, we come up with it. Maybe some of you believe in God, some of you don't. Maybe you are from a different religious background. But regardless of our beliefs, our religious beliefs, and there's one fundamental problem with our perception. And that according to Buddha is that it is subject to involvement, subject to discernment, subject to approach towards our sensory experience. That's where the problem is. When we are subjective, and then so that we want, everything wants, we want everything to happen, we want everything to occur in a way that everything makes us happy all the time. When it does not happen, then we become negative. And even if you just achieved the biggest goal in your life, maybe you want to buy a house, maybe you want to buy a car, marriage, whatever it is. People have dreams. Let's say you achieved your biggest dream in your life. Sometime later, and then you are back to your typical negative, subjective approach to your life experience. And again, you start complaining. You begin to complain, even against your own achievements. Why is that? It's because what you have achieved is not the only purpose in your life. As long as you don't achieve, as long as you keep trying to achieve that one big goal in life, and then you may even tend to, at that point, you may tend to explain the purpose of life in light of that one big thing that you want to achieve. But once you are done with achieving, then again you may get frustrated again. At that point, then you may start going after another goal in life, another purpose of life, and then again you are unhappy. So, and that's what happens to us, regardless of our religious or spiritual or ethnic or cultural backgrounds. And that is the nature of our human condition. That is the human nature. Not happy at all. Happy for the moment, and then again, at times, the bigger the happiness or the bigger the achievement, it can bring us more suffering, more dukkha. Why? Because in your struggle to keep that joy, keep that happiness forever, but it doesn't happen, and then disappears faster, and then you end up in dukkha. And dukkha takes you to dukkha and sukha, and you are familiar with these words. Sukha. And then dukkha. I think we did discuss these two terms in one of our previous classes, sukha and dukkha. Now, sukha is happiness, joy. Dukkha is unsatisfactoriness. Sukha is a sense of fulfillment, and dukkha is a sense of unfulfillment. Actually, those are the better terms. Sukha is sense of fulfillment. Dukkha is a sense of unfulfillment. Both terms end with suffix. This computer is giving me trouble. Both the terms end with, see, when I said my computer is giving me trouble, see the subjective negative approach I'm having. This is the computer that I love. So I am near and dear to this computer. So this is, but at the same time, for the moment, I had the feeling of kind of, how to say, frustration or unpleasant feeling for the moment, see. Given the moment, I had that feeling. As I said, my computer is giving me trouble. See, this, just look at these two words, sukha and dukkha. So both ends with the suffix ka. Ka means negative. Suffix ka means negative. Ka is negative. Su is happy. Du is unhappy. So finally, when we are having a sukha experience, happy experience, and then what happens? Then we struggle to keep that sense of happiness like forever. And it doesn't stay like that. And that happy feeling, that happy experience, it disappears. It vanishes from our memory, from the moment. And when the moment of sukha is over, it becomes the memory. Unless we rekindle our memory, unless we rekindle that experience, unless we bring that memory into activation, and we wouldn't, we would continue to suffer, continue to be negative of that sukha, that happy experience which is now gone. And so that's why I said sukha leads to dukkha again. And needless to say, dukkha leads to dukkha. Dukkha leads to dukkha. When you fail to achieve something, and then so that you are now having a sense of unfulfillment, and at that point you have to struggle to get rid of that sense of unfulfillment. And there's a struggle. There's a little struggle in your effort to remove, to get rid of that feeling of that sense of unfulfillment. And then when it is a sukha feeling, and again the little struggle is there. Again you have to struggle to retain that sense of fulfillment. And then either in both cases, and then you get energy, and then you feel you get tired. You get tired, and then so that is the basic problem with the subjective approach. Any questions so far, my friends? All right. Okay. Now that is about the overall. That's the function of consciousness. Now, just in summary, let me say that the five aggregates. Why Buddha deconstruct selfhood into 5 areas or 5 aggregates? It is just to give us a sense that our selfhood does not have a permanent substance, and then so it is not it's not a permanently uniformed entity or mechanism. It is a conditionally uniformed entity or mechanism. Those are the terms that you may use to explain, to define selfhood. If I repeat, selfhood, that is I, that is me, is not a permanently uniformed entity, and it is a conditionally uniformed entity. When the conditions change, the uniformity changes too. Because then it is when something is conditionally uniformed, conditionally formed or uniformed, and it is subject to change. And you come across this Buddhist statement, so that everything is subject to change. Everything is subject to change, or everything is in a state of flux. And then this statement, everything is subject to change, corresponds to one canonical term, anicca. And we did discuss that in our previous discussion on the three signs of existence, three signata of existence. Anicca, anicca, subject to change. Why we are subject to change? All this while our selfhood, our self, or the concept or the notion of I continues to remain a conditionally formed or uniformed entity, not as a permanently formed or uniformed entity. Each and every area or the aggregate of that uniformed entity goes through change as well. So as a result, and then all these five aggregates also relative to each other, so that they are internally relative to each other, so that our existence is relative. And so just in order to give what that sense, Buddha uses deconstructive approach every time possible. So we take a break at 9:45 or 10 o'clock. So now let's just go through these examples. Here, feeling, perception, volition, and sensory consciousness. And we can skip the first one, material form. So the feeling again is so that pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral feeling. That is, pleasant is sukha, unpleasant dukkha, and neutral is upekkha. And perception again, recognizing the color of an object, its shape, size, or any other perceptions that result from analyzing the world, our material bodies, or the mind. Now that is her explanation, her definition, based on the canon actually. This is, as I go through the lines, so that I revisit the corresponding Pali phrases in my head, so that the color, object, shape, size, or any other perceptions that results from analyzing the world, our material bodies, or the mind. So now this is what the perception is. Now, Marichi, Upama, Sanya. This is how Buddha explains perception. Perception. Perception is like a mirage. it's like a mirage. And he comes up with the deer analogy. So that a certain forest area is hit by a famine, a drought, and there hasn't been rainfall for many years, and the wildlife is dying, and then so they didn't have food, and there was this bunch of deer running around, starving, looking for thirsty, and they are starving to death. And then at a distance, they see the water. And then, as you know, scientific explanation of that, when the hot sun touches the earth and that reflects the heat. The reflection of heat in the eyes of the deer is the water. So that they will keep, and then so as they see the water at a distance, they keep running towards the water. By the time they approach that area, and then they see their imagination of water, and their perception of water is further away, and they keep running after the water. But the more they run, they get tired, they lose more energy, and they would never get to drink that water, because at that point the water is non-existent at all. It is it is like a mirage. So it is like a reflection. So the mirage is a reflection of the heat. Likewise, whatever we perceive, whatever we perceive with our sense faculties, remains a certain version. It's a certain version of what we want to experience within. We don't see we don't see things as if I use that canonical phrases, so that we don't see as things they truly really are. And we don't even see the things as they appear to be. Things appear. The appearance of things is a different thing, and then the way we see the appearance is another thing. Now things appear in a certain way, but that certain way, quote unquote, differs from person to person, individual to individual. And when we are in a round table discussion, and right in the middle is the table, and now there's a glass full of water, and then if I ask you to take a look at the glass of water, and the most thirsty one of us would find the glass of water most fascinating. Why? Because you are the most thirsty. The more thirsty you are, so that your perception of the glass full of water brings you more happiness, more solace. You feel like grabbing the glass of water and drinking it at one sitting right away. And there's another one of us who had just had lots of water, and so that you are full, and then so that you are having a totally different perception of the glass of water, because you are full. And at that point, your perception is way different than the perception of the other friend of ours who is now extremely thirsty. Now that is where this problem is. So there's a question here. Okay, Bhante, step 2 from yesterday's discussion. Through volitional action is conditioned consciousness. Okay, Sankara Pacca Vijnana. Does the path of prajna steers one towards cessation of consciousness, or towards transcendence, or inhibit conditionality of the consciousness? And depending on how far, to what extent you use the objective approach. So otherwise, if you don't try to adopt the objective approach, you continue to acquisition of prajna or wisdom or the practice of the path would simply remain a dream. So that you have to make a conscious effort to look at things, look at your perceived things from the objective approach. Otherwise, this sankhara paccaya vijnana, when you let the sankharas and then you just see the sankhara based on your subjective approach, based on, so that it becomes sankharas. You are simply seeing or experiencing a certain version of what you see. So as a result, you will continue to remain subjective, and there's no moving up. In the spiritual path. Right. Did I answer that? So that being said, so sankhara, yes, perception again. Now, so of these five aggregates, perception is, to me personally, perception is most interesting. Why? Because it is perception that helps me, that helps us to understand the function of ourself, or the streaming of ourself more clearly. So that it is in fact perception that helps us to see the difference between subjective approach and objective approach. It corresponds back to this question as well from Sharon. So that just the path of Panya steers one towards cessation of consciousness or towards transcendence. So depending on the way you adopt, how far you adopt your subjective approach, objective approach. Now it is the same perception. When you revisit, actually that's the purpose of meditation. Typically, perception occurs as a subjective process. Perception is a subjective process. Once we have gathered data, sensory data, and then we need to put ourselves in the meditative moment, and then you revisit and refilter those sensory data. But at this time, not from the typical built-in subjective approach, but from the adopted objective approach. And that's the purpose of Satipatthana Sutta again, the four foundations of mindfulness. I know for sure you gain a vast knowledge of the Satipatthana from Master Jiru, I know, because he teaches, and I like the way he teaches the four foundations of mindfulness. And then any questions about perception or any other things? Any other factors? I think that's all we need to know about the five aggregates, because otherwise it would be redundant. I never want to go back again and again to the things that we have already discussed. The only conclusion here, the conclusive statement that we can make here is selfhood, or that is I, or that is I amness, that is the notion of me, I, is not a permanent entity. It's a conditionally uniformed entity. While the five aggregates have their own function, together they create a single entity called selfhood. And so that is so that's how we understand the idea of self in Buddhism, five aggregates. And then also the problem is not with, there's nothing wrong with the five aggregates, but the problem is not with the five aggregates themselves, but with the very way we approach, the way we perceive, the way we understand and or define or identify the five aggregates. And that is because that is based on clinging. So the statement is that it's not that the five aggregates are a source of suffering, but that the very clinging to the five aggregates are a source of suffering. And when usually the Pali phrase is so that everything is dukkha. So panchakanda. Everything is dukkha means everything is suffering, does not mean that everything is what Buddha means by everything is dukkha is everything could be a source of dukkha. And then that dukkha also depends on it varies from individual to individual. And then so that based on the degree or the level of your expectation, it changes. So the Buddha has five aggregates. So universally speaking, the five aggregates of the Buddha's selfhood and our selfhood is fundamentally the same. But he doesn't suffer, whereas I do. That's because of the fact that Buddha doesn't he doesn't cling to his own existence. He never gets frustrated or depressed with his existence. He doesn't get afflicted with accident. He remains unafflicted by his own experience. Whereas in my case, I find my own existence problematic. And I could go to the extent that I would hate myself being the way I am. And at times we would verbalize that, like, and you would simply say, and then you always address that, explain that, define that based on specific life situations, probably based on your relationship, based on your job, based on your background, based on your ambitions, based on your failures, based on your weaknesses, based on your talents, etc., etc. And then Buddha doesn't have that approach. We do. So that is why I find my existence problematic. I get frustrated with my own experience, my own existence. And then, for the moment, as I forget that change is existence and existence is change, I suffer. Now, change, that is anicca. Anicca is existence. That I live means, that I do exist means, that I function means, I change. Now, as I live, I change. As I change, as I live. But the problem is, I never want the change to occur to me. I never want myself, my selfhood, my individuality, my persona to change. But when it happens biologically and also psychologically, mostly it's biologically and emotionally, and then I can't stand my own change. I fail to cope with my change, and so that I suffer a lot. Remember, just nowadays the whole world is affected by COVID-19. Now, according to neuropsychologists and according to general medical people, experts, people are having low immunity. Their immunity continues to drop, not just because they are lacking nutrition. Another reason, they do too, and most people are in hunger and they are starving. But at the same, there's another key reason behind our reduced immunity. Behind our immunity dropping in the case of certain people is that we are emotionally down. So our feeling, our Vedana, we are having a negative feeling. We are using the aggregate of feeling to observe, to define our existence at this point. And as a result, so that it is having a negative neurotic impact on our existence. So it contributes towards the dropping, the reduction of immunity. So that being said, let's take a break. It's 9:45, so come back at 10 o'clock.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hello.
Hello,
Yeah.
Andre.
Hello, yes.
Hello.
Now, hi, I'm back. Everyone is back, right? Now, you see the screen I'm sharing?
Yes.
Okay. And then, as you know, second, with that session on 4 foundations of mindfulness, sorry, the 5 aggregates. Now, the whole class time today, the rest of the class time we would use to discuss karma, in which is another fundamental teaching. So that now karma is another complex Buddhist teaching. So we can start with the universal definition of karma. Karma is a psychologically produced energy through volition or intention, chetana. The statement Buddha made there of course like this: it is chetana that I call karma. Having willed, one acts through body, speech, or mind. Chetanaham bhikkhave kammang vadami. Chetayitva kammang karoti. Kayena vachaya manasa. And this occurs in the Anguttara Nikaya, one of the 5 books of the Sutta Pitaka. Now, and then during our during this discussion on karma, we will refer back and forth to the 3 types of religions that we have discussed on a number of occasions. 3 types of religions that were prevalent in the 6th century BCE, during which time Buddha lived. So that, and you heard many times that Buddha never wanted his teaching to fall into one of the 3 types of religion, types of faith, types of religious beliefs. So that in non-deterministic, non-fatalistic, actually it has to be Buddhism here, not Theravada. I mean, to correct it. Buddhism. Non-fatalistic Buddhism occurs teaching of what is the 5 governing causal orders of the universe. Now, we did discuss Buddhism being a non-deterministic, non-fatalistic, and yesterday we came across these 3 again with the corresponding Pali terms, right? So, Ubbe Kata Hetu, that is determinism. And then, so that is determinism. One ample example for Pubbe kata hetu means determined. Pubbe means previous, kata means done. The belief that everything occurs in accordance with our past karma. So now that is a determinism, a past karma. Jainism is a determinism, because in Jainism you believe that every action is a result of every result is everything that we come across in our life is a result of our past action. The only way to remove the karma, according to Jainism, is to reframe, just try your best and as frequently as possible, as any time possible, to avoid to prevent yourself, your Atman, getting contaminated, getting so adulterated with your perception. And then in order for emancipation or liberation, Jains, and they live an extreme form of non-violence. Now, veganism comes from Jainism. Now, you don't eat dairy products, right? You don't eat dairy because it's animal. Anything, so the dairies are from animal. You are pure, not simply vegetarian. You are vegan means you don't eat any dairy things. So that because it is, if you consume dairy, according in the eyes of Jains, in the eyes of Jainism, you are thereby directly or indirectly interfering with the existence of animals, wildlife, animals, whose flesh that human beings consume, eat, and whose milk that people drink. And so it is their property. So the milk is their property, not ours. We are not supposed to drink it. That is the story behind veganism, and it comes from Jainism. And Jainism is a pubbe kata hetu, or it's a determinism. In according to Jainism, pubbe kata, everything is pubbe previously, kata done, hetu. Hetu means the reason behind our existence, the reason behind everything that we come across emotionally, psychologically, socially, throughout our living is a result of our past action. That is puppe kata hetuvada. And at this point, now where the Buddha's teaching, Buddha rejected the ahimsa. Ahimsa is non-violence. So that non-violence had different forms in the Indian subcontinent. So that Mahatma Gandhi, according to some Western scholars, Mahatma Gandhi had what is called militant non-violence, so which I don't fundamentally agree to. Anyway, there are different forms of non-violence. Now, religious non-violence, political non-violence. Non-violence could be a movement, political movement. Especially in India, it was spiritual, but it's more like a Gandhi's movement of non-violence is more like for a political purpose, but in good faith. So the Jain at this point is not the political non-violence sort that we are talking about, but non-violence as a religious practice. And so Buddha rejected non-violence, Jain type of non-violence as too extreme and hence unrealistic, because you might have, and you may know that there are two types of, I think we did discuss during our coursework on the historical introduction to history of Buddhism. Remember we talked about two types of Jain priests or monks, actually they call monks, female monks, and so sky-clad, those who simply cover their private parts, those who remain fully naked all their life, they are sky-clad. Sky-clad means they cover their nudity with the sky, with the space, so that in their eyes, to that school, that sect of Jain monks, they are not naked, because they cover their nudity, nakedness with the space. So actually they have wrapped their body with the space, and so that they don't when they walk the society, they do so fully naked. But and Jain followers, and then consider it as is the highest achievement of selflessness, because they don't even think that they are shame, so that they don't feel ashamed of walking the society fully naked. And so that is so that those sky-clad Jain monks, priests, they remain fully nude, fully naked. They don't cover their private parts, and that's one school. The second school is white-clad, those who cover their body with a piece of cloth, white cloth. So that white-clad Jain monks, they fly, they travel overseas, whereas needless to say that there's no way for sky-clad monks to travel. They are self-contained within their monasteries. So that and then both sects of Jainism practice an extreme form of non-violence, ahimsa. And then so that why they do that is because of their deterministic belief. The only way to, if you let yourself, if you let your mind wander around the world, just like in Buddhist terms, we can be monkey-minded, and then what happens is you will not have control over your mind, over your senses, and then you will never have, you won't be able to have restraint over your sense faculties, so that your perception would be limitless, and then your perception may go in disarray, and then that could pave the way for the creation of a multitude of more and more and more karma. And the only way, because we already have, according to Jain belief, we have karma accumulated in abundance. So if we continue to acquire more karma, we wouldn't be able to achieve what is called moksha, liberation, salvation. So that then you may try to suppress, get rid of already acquired karma by extreme asceticism. So sky-clad Jain monks are extreme. They practice an extreme form of asceticism. And then you might have seen Jain monks the way. I myself saw several Jain monks in India, sky-clad monks. So going back to the term determinism. Now, Buddhism is not deterministic. It is non-deterministic. Why? In Buddhism, it doesn't say that everything is karmic. If it says, unlike in Jainism, so it's non-deterministic. And then Buddhism is non-fatalist, is not fatalistic either. So it is hence non-fatalistic. And what is the fatalism? And that is we come across ahetu appacchaya. Ahetu appacchaya. Uncaused. Things, the nature, ourselves, anything, the universe, the world, and each and everything within the world, within the universe is uncaused. That's the way they are. You can't talk about the beginning or the end of the things. There's no reason behind the things that are manifest to our naked eyes, including our own body, our mind, our mentality, our corporeality, physical world, anything. And then so that is not, so that's called fatalism. And then everything is already designed. Things are already designed so that you can change. Even if you try to make changes, but you can change the substance. You cannot change the original nature of things, because the original nature of the things is already decided. So that you are not supposed to interfere with the nature, interfere with the things. Even if you commit what's it called, there's no good and bad. There's nothing called good. There's nothing called bad. There's no need for us to have a moral sense, a sense of morality, a sense of moral fear, moral judgment, all that, because they don't apply. They are not applicable, because things are already determined by themselves. Nature knows what it is. Nature knows what it is by itself. Things have an identity that is already determined by themselves. And that is called the ahetu appacchaya vada. Actually, by the time I wrote this, I think I missed the other type that is called what is that? Non-fatalistic. Non-fatalistic. It has to be another term. Let me add that. Yeah, next one. The next type is theism. Now, so Buddhism is non-deterministic, non-fatalistic, non-theistic. Non-theism, theism we just discussed yesterday. That's called Issara Nimmana Hetu. Issara is Ishvara. Ishvara means Lord, God. Nimmana in Pali is Nirmana. Nirmana in Issara Nirmana, created by God, created by the divine. The reason behind everything is God. Everything is a creation by God, creation by Ishvara. So Nirmana, Nimmana is creation. And then, so that is theism. So those are the three universal types of religious beliefs. But even today, because we are talking about, we are discussing karma in an Indian context, Indian religious context, with reference to other non-Buddhist, other faiths within the Indian religious context. But again, even modern day religions, and they could fall into one of these four types. Now, in non-deterministic, non-fatalist, non-theistic Buddhism is teaching of what the five governing or causal orders of the universe. That's called niyamas. So they are niyamas. Niyama is a certain order. Understanding of these five causal orders helps to see the Buddha's non-deterministic, non-fatalistic, and non-theistic teaching. I will I will upload this again because with the corrections, additions. Teaching of karma and other fundamental teachings is a simple description of the 5 causes. So now let's go through the niyamas here. And niyam also means definiteness. But again, this discussion is based on the conventional teachings of the Buddha. Right? Now, according to the absolute level of teachings, the world doesn't exist. There's no karma committed, made, because there's no doer of karma. When there is no one, no person, no individual to commit karma, make karma, how can there be karma made? So that is, those are absolute teachings. Now we are defining, we carry out the discussion of karma based on the conventional teachings once again. I would like to say that, because often some people get confused as to the fact that if Buddha rejected the true existence of the world, the true existence of individuality, how can there be karma? Because there's no one committing karma, making karma. But that is the, and we are not supposed to mix up the two levels of teaching. And then absolute teachings of the absolute levels can be better digested by those who use the objective approach. And then, so that's why when in the Buddha's audience, it occurs at times that when the Buddha was explaining, giving a teaching based on the absolute truth, some people got confused, ordinary people, whereas arahants, enlightened ones, they remain silent because they saw the difference between the two levels of truth. So this karma, this teaching is based on the convention. This is a conventional teaching. So, because why I said that is, you come across this phrase in the Pali texts, kammas karako nati. Kammas karako nati. There is no doer of karma. Now this is a statement with regard to the absolute truth. So remember the two types of teachings we talked about, right? The teachings of absolute truth, that is the nitatta type of teachings, and the type of teaching that further requires clarification or commentaries, that's called the neyyatta. Two kinds of teachings we came across. We all came across that pair of terms. Nitatta types of teaching is the kind of teaching corresponding to the absolute truth, nothingness. Neyyatta teachings are the kind of teachings that corresponds to the conventional teachings, conventional level, worldly level. So the niyamas, niyama literally means definiteness. So even though Buddhism doesn't accept those definitive universal orders, but conventionally, given the nature of the conventional nature of the world, there are these 5 universal governing orders. And then first one is Utu Niyama, meteorological physical order. Utu Niyama is the natural law of non-living matter. This natural law orders the change of seasons and phenomena related to climate and the weather. It explains the nature of heat and fire, soil and gases, water and wind. Most natural disasters, such as floods and earthquakes, would be governed by Utu Niyama. Gravitational force, which is a natural phenomenon by which all things with mass or energy, including planets, stars, galaxies, even light, are brought towards one another comes under this order. Now, including all these natural occurrences. Now, Utuniyama. So the Utuniyama, why Buddha came up with this physical or meteorological order, or this natural order, is that, remember we happen to say, and we discuss the anthropological, how to put that, the anthropology of religion yesterday, how our primal ancestors observe the natural occurrences of the nature, like the sunrise, sunset, famine, drought, rainfall, day and night and all that. And so that they came across with, and our primal ancestors would think that each natural occurrence was an act of a certain divine power. And as they continue through generations, as they pass that knowledge down to other generations, and later on they would come up with, they come to believe that all those individual occurrences in the nature are individual acts by individual gods, but at the same time, there must be another, and that would pave the way for the birth of polytheism, belief in many gods, many divine forces, and then later on, that would pave the way for the birth of monotheism, because unless there is another higher power above all those divine forces, this complex pattern of the nature would be otherwise impossible to be governed by those individual divine forces. For sure, there's a higher power overseeing, and that paved the way for the belief, the birth of monotheism. Now, so according to Buddha, Utuniyama, or the meteorological or the physical or the order of the natural law, is not deterministic. It is not theistic. It's naturalistic. It's natural. It's a naturalistic thing. Thing. It's not theistic. So Buddha rejected this physical order as an act of God. So that, put into modern terms, Utuniyama would correlate with what we think of as physics, chemistry, geology, and several sciences of inorganic phenomena. The most important point to understand about Utuniyama is that the matter it governs is not part of the law of karma and is not overridden by karma. So natural disasters, such as earthquakes, are not caused by karma. So karma has no role in natural disasters or anything in the nature. But unlike the way our primal ancestors believed. So any questions about Utuniyama? No, I guess, right? Now, let's look at the second one, Bija, botanical, genetical. Bija niyama is the law of living matter, what we would think of as biology. The Pali word bija. Bija means seed. And so bija niyama governs the nature of germs and seeds and the attributes of sprouts, leaves, flowers, fruits, and plant life generally. Laws of genetics that apply to all life, plant and animal, would come under the heading of Bija niyama. Now, this is the botanical order. And then why? Now, so given the Utuniyama, and Buddha countered, Buddha countered the belief that the physical order, Utuniyama, is an act of God. It's non-theistic. And so that, and then according to Buddha, according to Jainism, probably Buddha had Jainism in his head when he described Bija niyama. Now, according to Jainism, not not only living beings are sentient, but plants are sentient too. Plants also have a kind of consciousness. According to some Jain teachings, just like we living beings do, sentient beings do, plants and trees, they may also go through what is called transmigration. Oh, sorry. Where am I typing? Has to be. Transmigration. That is meant samsara. Now, samsara in Jainism is very similar to that in Buddhism, because both Jainism and Buddhism are non-theistic religions, non-theistic faiths. And Jainism is a humanism, so is Buddhism. But according to Jainism, even plants and trees, even plants have a life, plants have a consciousness, just like we humans do. They may also transmigrate. They may also have a soul or consciousness, and they may come upon death. They may come back into life as something else. Now that is, and Buddha counted that. And then, so if everything is karmic, meaning, so that is, what is called deterministic, then according to Jainism, when and if everything is karmic, hence deterministic, and that plants also have consciousness, they also have Atman or soul. So then, so that at that point, plants and trees, and they are also germs, they are also governed by the karmic order. And so that karmic order in Jainism is very different than that in Buddhism. Now, in Jainism, so the bija niyama or genetic order falls within karma, and it is because of karma, and then so that genetic order, botanical order, is governed by karma, because of the fact that even trees and plants have a rebirth, reincarnation, they transmigrate. So, and that is why, but the Buddha rejected the idea and said, no, trees and plants, they don't have a consciousness. While they have a living, they are living, they have a life, but they are consciousness. The plants are conscious, but they don't accumulate karma. When a tree is dead, there's no coming back, because, and then whatever the consciousness, whatever the awareness that the trees have built in, and then so it gets dissolved, and there's no Atman. There's no, trees and plants don't have Atman that can leave the tree and come back in a different form. There's no such thing. So Buddha rejected that, and Buddha included in botanical realities, genetical things, realities under this genetic order, botanical order, Vijnaniyama. Next one is Dharma, Dhamma Niyama. This is existential order. This is about the existence or life, order of life of things. This is a Dhamma here, to not to be taken as the Buddha's teaching, because Dharma has many meanings, or 52 meanings, or 50 meanings. Now here, the Pali word Dhamma or Dharma in Sanskrit has several meanings. It's often used to refer to the teaching of the Buddha. Here it is used to mean something like manifestation of reality, or the nature of existence, the doctrine of the three marks of existence: anicca, impermanence; dukkha, unsatisfactoriness; and anatta, no self; and sunyata, absence of unchanging essence, would be part of the Dhamma Niyama. Now, according to Buddha, this existential order is the most subtle, one of the subtle ones, because most people fail to see this existential order. Once again, unless you look at things in terms of the three signs of existence, you would not be able to see that that anything is. You would not be able to see that everything is absent of an unchanging essence. Its absence of unchanging essence means that when you put in other words, so it is everything is subject to change. Everything has an essence, but that essence is subject to change. Nothing has an unchanging essence, and so and that is the existential order. Any questions about the existential order, Dhamma Niyama? Okay, the next one is Chitta Niyama. By the way, the first three, Uttaniyama, Bija and Uttaniyama and Bija and Dhamma Niyama, they are external orders. And then the last two are internal orders, because Chitta Niyama is a psychological order. Chitta means mind, heart, or state of consciousness. Chitta Niyama is the law of mental activity, something like psychology. It concerns consciousness, thoughts, and perceptions. We tend to think of our mind as us or as the pilot directing us through our lives. But in Buddhism, mental activities are phenomena that arise from causes and conditions, like other phenomena. In the teaching of the five aggregates, Panchakanda, mind is a kind of sense organ and thoughts are sense objects. Once again, we refer back to the teaching of five aggregates here. Now, Chitta, interestingly, there was this belief in India, in ancient India. I think, if I am correct, that occurs in the Pottapada. Later on, I will double check if I am correct. Anyway, in Pottapada Sutra or somewhere in the canon, you come across an early Indian belief that why Buddha came up with this teaching, this category, this psychological order, is probably because of that belief, that pre-existing belief of chitta or mind being controlled or governed by a divine force. Now, once one Brahmin, one man comes to the Buddha, and then now Buddha, he is having a dialogue with the Buddha on consciousness, and that the man says that when we feel sleepy, when we are tired and feel like going to bed, so that God would take the consciousness back, and so that we can, then we stop thinking, and so that as we feel like waking up, so that that is when he puts the consciousness back in our body. Now, that was an earlier belief in India. And then so that Buddha smiles and said, or that whosoever does that must be very, very busy, extremely busy, because there are lots of people who are getting tired and feeling like going to bed. And at the same time, so he has to take the conscious of tired ones off, and he had to put them back in the body, so that somehow Buddha rejected that. And then it looks like it's likely that this teaching, this category, this governing order is also in response to such a pre-Buddhist belief that our mind, our consciousness is governed by Brahman or God. So at that point, when yes, Tibetan Buddhism, a branch of the Mahayana Buddhism, has been practicing the belief of reincarnation, which is rebirth when determining the succession of Sangha head. Is it in accordance with the Buddhist canon? If so, which sutra? Okay, actually, now Pali Buddhism has a difference. Pali Buddhism is of a different view. Now, so that you don't come across such a belief in Buddhism, unlike in Tibetan Buddhism. Yeah, in Tibetan Buddhism, Sangha head or the big lamas, and they would come back to reincarnation, and then a supreme lama always comes back to samsara in the same or higher status. But you don't come across such a teaching in Theravada Buddhism or in Pali Buddhism. Actually, it is only in the Tibetan branch of Tibetan Buddhism, I guess. Not even in the other Mahayana schools, I guess. Yeah, so that we don't come across such a sutra in the Pali canon, except that. Yeah, thank you. Welcome. Except that when you practice Bodhisattva path, because the Bodhisattva path is all about how to say, sacrificing your body, your talents, your abilities for the sake of the world. And at that point, your practice is necessarily selfless. When you are selfless, and and you don't feel anxious at your last thought moment, because when you are firm in Bodhisattva path, firm in your Bodhisattva practice, and so that you may be very easily able to overcome your bhava raga, so desire for existence, the latent tendency of bhava raga, and you can basically suppress that. As a result, you may not get confused, or you may encounter no fear, no anxiety. At the last thought moment, close to your death. At death, you may die a very peaceful death. So as a result, you may come back to humanity or go to divinity, and maybe with the same talents, skills, wisdom, or with higher talents or wisdom. So that is the only time that we come, and that you could come back in the same way. Bodhisattvas can do that. But according to, and at that point, both Mahayana Buddhism and Theravada Buddhism agree to the same idea, that there's a difference when it comes to Bodhisattvas, those who are firm in practice, that they can govern their last thought moment. They can how to say, have a big impact on the karmas, on different karma that would otherwise trigger your next birth. And that's when a Bodhisattva would come back as the Bodhisattva, no matter what. That's why you come back with that popular statement in non-Tibetan, in Buddhist schools other than the Tibetan Buddhism. So yes, and then so according to that early one ancient Indian belief, so that God would Brahman, whatever, the divine would take the consciousness back when the individual is tired, feeling tired and feeling like going to bed, feeling like resting his body. And in order to help the individual rest his body, rest physically, and the consciousness would be taken back. And because and it would be kept safe, God or the divine the divine would, divine I mean in terms of God here. So, and then keep the consciousness safe, and he would put it back inside the body. When that's when the person is feeling like waking up now. It's not that the person wants to wake up by his own will. It's because of the fact that when God knows the man has rested enough, he had taken enough rest, and so that he would put the consciousness back. So in pre-Buddhist India, Chitta Niyama, psychological order, has had a theistic connection because of its connection with Brahman. Whereas psychological order is an independent order, which is based on, it is an internal order based, which is part of our five aggregates. So that is the mental order. Next one is Karma Niyama. Karma Niyama, karmic order. Karma or karma in Sanskrit is the law of moral causation. Everything has cause and effect. Right? Everything is a result of causes and conditions. And then when it comes to karma, and by the way, there are two kinds of universes that we see: the moral or the mental universe, and then welcome, moral or the mental universe, and then so then the physical world, the physical universe. Now, the teaching of causality, or the cause and effect, is applied into the teaching of karma in a moral sense. Now, this is the cause and effect with regard to our moral behavior, moral responsibility. All of our volitional thoughts, words, and deeds creates an energy that brings about effects, and that process is called karma. Now, this is the karmic causality, karmic causation. When you talk about the birth of a tree, or existence, life of a tree, death of a tree, and then birth and life of and death of a mountain, any object, any physical phenomenon, and then you simply apply the teaching of causality in general terms. Whereas here you apply the teaching of causality in a moral sense, in an ethical sense. Now we are responsible for our behavior, and then we are also responsible for other existence of others as well, other things as well. Now, karma. So according to theistic religions, karma has a connection with God or Brahman, and according to determinism, so the karma is beyond control. Nobody is able to change the karma, because every occurrence, every happening in our life is a result of our past action, past karma. And then it also has a connection with the divine, according to theistic religions. And Buddha saw a total point of departure here. Now, according to the Buddha's definition of karma, it is very different than the karma as described in deterministic teachings. Like in Jain, karma is different than fate, because even though once created, karma becomes the permanent property of our consciousness. Wherever you go, you carry your karma within. And let me just draw your attention to one verse from the Dhammapada, and where you come across this statement, this verse: "Na antalike," even if you hide yourself in the sky, na samuddamache, even if you hide yourself in the deep ocean, pabbatanang na pabbatanang viram pavisa, even if you carve a safe place deep inside the mountain and you hide yourself in there, deep in there, so that na antalikke na samuddamache na pabbatanang viram pavisa na vijjati so jagati padeso. Nowhere in the universe or the world can you find a place where you can hide so that you are safe from karma. And you come up that verse in the Dhammapada. So yeah, nowhere are you safe from karma. Once created, karma comes to you. It follows you within because you carry it within. But there's one big difference between karma as taught in Buddhism and karma as taught in Jainism. To a certain extent, to theism too, theistic religions also have. If karma has a connection, if there's a belief of karma in theistic religions, and that teaching is definitely connected to the divine because of the theistic connection. Now at that point, so that I have come across people from different backgrounds. Once we had Hindus, Jains, Buddhists, Christians, Jews, Muslims, and people from different backgrounds. We did talk about karma. Everyone agreed to the fact that karma, action produces results, and that is karma. But based on their personal religious views, so that we as a group, we had differences. There are differences of opinion as to the nature of karma. And one God believer says, well, I made some bad karma and God will take care of that. It's up to him to punish me. Or I did some good karma, so that God must be happy. So now that is that's how you build the theistic connection of the karma, if you are from theistic belief. And if you don't believe in how to say ahetu appachavada, fatalism, because everything is uncaused, there are no causes and conditions behind anything, so that you don't have, even if you alter the nature, even if you make changes to the things, they don't change by themselves. You make no change to them, because in substance, what they are, whatever they are, everything is whatever it is. All things are whatever they are. That's how they are. That's what they are. And you can't define anymore. So that is the fatalistic definition of phenomena. That's including our mind, our body, natural world, everything. And then some of my friends who were from that background, from the fatalistic background, and then what they said, well, I drink a lot, and then I have a lot of mistresses, and then I enjoy myself. I give my body comfort as much as I could at the same, but I'm not worried. I'm not worried because things are the way they are. But at the same time, when I asked him whether do you believe in karma, well, to a certain extent, I do believe in karma, even though I believe in fatalism. I believe in the belief that everything is uncaused, unconditioned. Everything is whatever the way are. But when I asked him repeatedly, he said, well, I asked him a question. Now, you don't get to drink your favorite brand. You never get to smoke your favorite cigarette brand. You smoke your favorite brand, and you never happen to, and for months your favorite mistress is nowhere to be seen, then what would feel? Well, I feel sad. Then what will happen to you because you are due to sadness? What will happen? Well, at times I'm sleepless. I can't sleep. I think about her. I think about my brand. I think about my cigarette brand. I think about my alcohol brand. All that, and that's when I suggest the meaning. So your karma of disappointment has returned the effect, that is your sadness, and further it has paved the way for another by effect, that is you can't sleep, you feel restless, and that's when well, at that point I believe in karma. So that's the whole point here. Karma has nothing to do with the theistic belief. It has nothing to do with the deterministic beliefs. It is purely our mind, our consciousness, that as mind goes through, mind creates feelings, mind creates sensations, mind reactivates memories, and mind activates natural or tendencies of the mind, and as the mind activates visible tendencies, visible mental tendencies or latent mental tendencies, and then so that would lead to the creation of some karma. So that is when Buddha wanted to show that karmic order is an independent order within the individual. It does not have a cosmic connection. So any questions? You may have seen some, you may have seen the pattern of departure that Buddha did from the pre-existing pre-Buddhist notions of these niyamas. So karma is an independent order. It's within the individual. It has no cosmic connection whatsoever. By the way, at this point, because karma is so popular a belief, or in anywhere in the world, that sometimes some people believe that there's a cosmic place, or there's a landscape, or there's a universal place in the universe, a realm of the universe, where all the karmas travel and stay. And sometimes some people have asked me whether karma is something like the power of God, whether we have karma deposited or stored somewhere in the universe. When I asked why they think so, and they told me that to them karma is something that oversees, that kind of governs our behavior further. And then when I said no, it's not such a thing. It's not a cosmic power. Karma is not a cosmic energy. But except that karma can so that somebody one's karma, somebody's karma can affect somebody else's behavior. Now that's for sure. And so that let me touch on that too, because that's called cross karma. Especially you come across phrases, statements regarding cross karma a lot in America and in the Western world. Well, I am a victim of their karma, or I'm suffering because of somebody else's karma. At that point, what you mean by karma, basically, what you basically mean by that is not the result, not the result produced by action, but the very action itself. Now, karma literally means action, doing. Whereas in the in this teaching of karma, karma means not action, but the result of action. Doing. So the karma is not the action. Literally karma is action. Karma means action. But doctrinally, according to the teaching of karma, it's not the action or doing that is karma, but the very result produced by action or doing. That's karma. So it is a force. Once created, it will remain part of our consciousness. Where do we store karmic energy? Now, just as I said, as I mentioned in response to that question from some of my friends who believe that karma is stored somewhere in the cosmos, in the universe, and then I happen to say that karma is stored within ourselves, within our consciousness, and then we did come back. We did come back with these terms, this pair of words, bhavanga and somehow, sometimes I can put diacritics. I can use diacritics in this Zoom notepad, but at times today I can't do that. I don't know why. Now, bhavanga vijnana, and vijnana, you know, that consciousness, and ale vijnana, vijnana there again. So bhavanga vijnana, the term bhavanga vijnana occurs in Theravada Buddhism, and ale vijnana occurs in Mahayana Buddhism. Especially in, I don't know the Chinese word for that, Vietnamese, Chinese, Korean word for that. For in Sanskrit Buddhist text, you come up with the term alaya. So bhavanga, bhava, as you know, is becoming. Anga is part of that. Consciousness, the part of consciousness, an area of consciousness that is part of, that was responsible, that has a role in our re-becoming, in our coming back to life, in ourselves getting reborn into a different life form. That's called bhava. Okay, thank you. That's a Vietnamese word, but I am afraid to pronounce that. Remember when I will thank you, Wang, for sharing that word. How to pronounce that word, please? May I know how to pronounce that word? Okay. So, similar to China, okay. Bante, could any detail, so that's from Josh, any details about the niyama in the suttas ever become outdated due to, that's a very nice question actually. Details about the niyamas in the suttas ever become outdated due to impermanence. Actually, you are asking me, Josh, a very critical question, probably a question that any Buddhist must ask himself or herself. Now, when it comes to teaching of impermanence, probably when it comes to Buddhist teachings, if there's a kind of teaching, Buddhist teaching that you come across or you happen to read, happen to encounter, happen to see, happen to read, is the teaching of impermanence. Actually, I would like to say the teaching of Buddhist teaching of impermanence kind of overrides all other fascinating teachings. Yes, there are explanations of niyamas throughout the Tripitaka, throughout the Pali canon. They are fascinating, and Buddha talks about mind and matter, our existence in conventional terms, in absolute terms, and there are certain things that Buddha don't apply the teaching of impermanence. For example, karma and impermanence are hardly mentioned in explanations about bodhisattva path, right? If a bodhisattva happens to fail in his effort to complete a certain parami or certain perfection, or in case a bodhisattva happens to be sad that he is not progressive enough along the path, he is not doing enough in his path along the bodhisattva path, and then he would tend to make up his mind, everything is impermanent, so that I should not try. Actually, when it comes to teaching of impermanence, some people, even some Buddhists, they seem to misinterpret in impermanence. They used to apply the teaching of impermanence at the wrong place, and so that's why, as bodhisattvas set the goal of enlightenment, and then they don't apply the teaching of impermanence, teaching of karma into their application, into their bodhisattva path, because that would otherwise block them. Probably, Josh, I said too much, probably. Yes, Bante, when you use the phrase property of subliminal consciousness, are you advising that it changes and thus the impermanence of? Exactly, Shan. That's right. Yeah, because it's both. It's other way. It's both ways. While the consciousness, so that the subliminal property of subliminal, so the karma, habits, and karma, memory, and habits are the property of subliminal consciousness, and it is the subliminal area of our consciousness that is similar to soul that disintegrate itself from the physical body upon death, that travels a certain distance and then pushes itself into the embryo of into an embryo, if it is a birth in the womb, or if it is a spontaneous birth, so that it is the same subliminal consciousness that is transformed into the body and mind of a divine being. Yes, as the subliminal consciousness gathers more and more properties, the properties are of memory, karma, and habits. As a result, the consciousness itself gets modified as well. Okay, alale sound like okay, alale is alaya. So, at that being said, yes, alaya. So subliminal consciousness. Subliminal. Thank you for using that term. The subliminal consciousness is the bhavanga consciousness. Bhavanga part of our becoming. The area of consciousness that is part of, that has the role, that determines our comeback, that determines our migration from one body to another, from one life form to another. And at that point, while the consciousness as a general term cannot be seen as the Buddhist counterpart of the theistic notion of soul, Atman, you have to specifically use the term subliminal consciousness as what resembles the theistic notion of Atman. And then alaya in Sanskrit is a storehouse. Any place that stores anything. In Sanskrit, pustaka alaya, the storehouse of books, that is library. So alaya, the storehouse. So alaya vijnana is the storehouse consciousness, and it is the bhavanga consciousness in Pali. So it is the same thing. So, and then at this point, you may just remind yourself that alaya vijnana, if you need to see if you want to see a corresponding concept or a reality or a belief compared with Atman or soul in theistic religions, it is alaya vijnana, it is subliminal consciousness, it is bhavanga consciousness that resembles soul or Atman. Now, so then gravity. Karma or karma in Sanskrit is the law of moral causation. All of our volitional thoughts. Here the volitional thoughts means intentional thoughts. Words and deeds create an energy that brings about effects, and that process is called karma. So karma is an energy. Karma is a mental energy. It's a force. It's a force created by our action. So that just like the excitement and enhancement of wind, the matter, how to say, the element of wind that creates cyclones, tornadoes. So our action produces a mental force that is called karma. The important point is that karma, niyama, is a kind of natural law, like gravity, that operates without having to be directed by a divine intelligence. See, that's what we were talking about. Now, karma is also a natural law. It is not governed by anyone. If there is one who governs, that is ourselves, we ourselves, because our intentional action. But in terms of action itself, we have control. But once the result of that action, which is the karmic energy, has now been created, the very doer, that is us, ourselves, do not have control over that power. We can prevent, we can take preventive measures, but out of ignorance or out of craving, out of attachment, out of goodness, out of motivation for enlightenment, you may make good karma, you may commit bad karma, and then so that you are intentional. That unless it is volitional, unless it is intentional, our action doesn't produce any karma, meaning that you are intentional means you already have the space, you already have sufficient time to prevent yourself from committing a bad karma. Or you could tend to do the good karma to a better extent, actually. So that karma is intentional means you know what you are doing. And then you have, you have the power to control it. You can control the action. You can govern the action, but not the very result of the action. When the result is produced, that is none other than karma, and it becomes like a kind of natural law governed by no one. The very doer of karma, the very doer, that is you, that is me, that is us, have no control whatsoever of karma. But one thing is here. Now, karma is not fatalistic. Karma is not fate. But at this point, karma in Buddhism is different than that of Jainism in terms of the nature of the karma. Now, according to Jain belief of karma, you can change it. You can change it. The only thing is you have to face it and you have to use it. You have to live out of that karma. At the same time, preventing yourself from making new karma. Whereas in Buddhism, you have some control, not control actually. You can make certain change to your karma. And that is by planting and nurturing new intentions. You can create new karma that may help you. I'm just typing the whole statement so that you can write it down. That may help you push other karma to the sides. Now, you have, if there is some control that you can have over karma, is when, now karma is intentional. Karma chetanaham bhikkhave kammang vadami. Intention itself is karma. Volitional, intentional thoughts are karma. Intentional feelings are karma, meaning they produce karma. So when and if intention is karma, then by planting new intentions, you can produce new karma that you may use to push other karmas of your choice to the sides, because you have chosen certain karmas that you never want, and you want them not to return to you sooner, so that you want to push them to the sides, and so that you can make some other karmas take the leading role, and for that you can do that. So at that point, Buddhist idea of karma, the Buddhist characteristic of karma is different than that of that in Jainism. But you can govern the action, but not the result of it. But still, you can make some changes. Actually, changes in terms of delaying. You can delay. You can push by pushing the certain karmas to the side. You can so that you can make new karma come back to you. so that you could feel safe. So that is, and we will come across that during our discussion on after lunch. Any questions so far for the company, Yama? So Theravada, sorry again, divine intelligence. Actually, I had to say, I don't know why I put it Theravada. Probably I just submitted to conference, I guess. Yes, in Buddhism, karma is not a cosmic criminal justice system, and then no supernatural force or God is directing it to reward the good and punish the wicked. Karma is rather a natural tendency for skillful kusala actions to create beneficial effects, and unskillful kusala actions to create harmful or painful effects. Karma once created becomes the property of Bhavanga, subliminal consciousness that we did talk about before. So it's a cosmic criminal justice system. I don't know, somebody taught me this wording. I like that, because as opposed to human criminal justice system, what is meant by cosmic criminal system, that there is God, there is Brahman overlooking, overseeing your action, because he has the control over your Atman. And so that, and as we discussed yesterday, in according to some schools of Christianity, and there's a judgment day, and according to Hinduism, there's no judgment day, but what happens is, so the Brahman or God would ask you to make you feel responsible for your own action, so that your union with Brahman, your going back to Brahman would be delayed, because you have to spend an indefinite period of time in the purgatory, according to these some branches of Christianity. But according to Hinduism, which is also theistic religion, you will, and then your going back is delayed, and as a result you will wander around samsara. You'll come back to samsara again and again, because you get stuck, because you forgot to be responsible for your actions. But now, according to given strictly in a universal moral sense, so that even if you don't believe in karma, even if you come from a theistic religious background or non-theistic, whichever it is, regardless of your religious beliefs, so that overall, as human beings, we are responsible for our action, even in the eyes of the legal system, justice system. Even according to God, believe in religions. According to God, believe in religions also, because you are responsible towards God, towards the divine Brahman, means how to be responsible for God. By being responsible for yourself, you be responsible for God, Brahman. And then even if, and when it comes to Buddhism, you grasp that, you think about that, you determine that on a human level. Now, so that we create ourselves, so that we are created by our own karma. So that later on, so the karma is not everything. Remember, we talked about 3 areas, but at the last thought moment, at death, it is the karma that triggers our next existence. Because of that, karma has a fundamental role in our recreation, our creation. But when we come back to life, right from the embryonic level, so that there are 2 other conditions, as we discussed yesterday. Not simply the karmic, in addition to the karmic condition, it is the genetic condition and the social condition that together create the individual, the selfhood. But karma has a leading role in our creation, because that happens when at the recreation. Sorry, I think recreation is not the right word because it's a different connotation. At the rebirth, so at the rebirth of our consciousness. But still, karma is not the only thing. So the karma, just as there are other 4 governing orders other than the karmic order, so that we are constantly affected by these 5 governing orders, niyamas, and at the same time, as on the individual level, on the personal level also, our selfhood, our mentality, our corporeality are programmed, designed by karma. Especially karma has the leading role in determining which sort of life form we must acquire upon death. And then from our parents, that's genetic, embryonic, that is so that sperm and ovum. And that's how Buddha explains in different sutras, like Mahanidhana Sutta. Now, upon death, when the consciousness finds a suitable womb, and then it would keep waiting for the proper embryo to occur within the mother's womb. And Buddha says that and explains in but nowadays this is simple science. But way back in the 6th century BC, that was real science. That was shocking science. As Buddha said, that it is the male excel and the female excel. Mata cha utuni hondi. The mother has had her period, menstruation. She had just passed her menses, so that the womb is ready to create a birth. And then the Mata Pitaro Sannipatita. Sannipatita is to Sannipatita. The mother and father have had intercourse, sexual intercourse. That is called Sannipatita. And then it says a consciousness, third condition. So the womb is ready. So that the menses. So the menses has created the womb suitable for the birth. And then so that there occurs the Sannipatita, that is the cross-fertilization of sperm and ovum, male egg cell and female egg cell. That is what Sannipatita means. And then Gandhabbo cha Pachupatito hoti. Gandhabba in Pali is different than Gandhabba in certain Mahayana teachings, because according to Theravada Buddhism, there is nothing called interim birth between one birth and another birth, because any birth, however short it is a full birth. Any birth is full. There's no interim birth, because and Gandhab, according to, at that point, there's some disagreement between some Theravada and between Theravada Buddhism and Mahayana Buddhism. But again, the entire problem with about the terminology, not the Gandhab itself. Gandhab literally means ready to go. Gandhab as a Pali term literally means ready to go, meaning ready to go for another birth. And it is the same. It is the same subliminal consciousness. Get a name change, get a different name when it is about to push itself into the embryo. That it is called Gandhab. But as long as it is within a living person, living individual, you don't call it Gandhabba. You call it subliminal consciousness, Bhavanga, or storehouse. But by the time it disintegrates itself from the physical body, and then so that it is independent of the corporeal reality, but it's still it is not a full being, but that is similar to soul in Judeo-Christian religions, and so but it can travel. It is fueled by, and it is directed by, fueled by karma, because it is a certain karma that determines where must Gandhabba go in order to get reincarnated somewhere. So in Theravada, we don't use the word reincarnation, it's rebirth. Get itself reborn into a different life form. So that is Gandhabba. It's a different name then. That is the Bhavanga consciousness. So it is once created, the karma is beyond control, beyond our control. But the only way we can do is we can permanently block karma. The only way we can do is, only thing we can do with the karma is just to delay from resulting, coming back to us, returning to us, is to plant new karma, plant new intentions through which you create new karmic force, and so that you can use it. And by the way, you need meditation too. Once you create it, in case you feel like you are going through some bad karma at that point, you need to meditate a lot. And let's talk about that after lunch. It's 11:32. Let's see you back at 1:30.